So I got up this morning like any other morning. I threw some clothes on, went for my morning walk, and did my morning walk video. And then on my way home, I stopped at the local store, which is not far from my house, literally same block, just to get some milk. And as I'm paying, I have a small little conversation, hi, how are you type conversation with the teller because we're familiar with each other. As I said, it's my local store. But as I started to speak to him, he kind of just caught my eye and stared at me for a minute, not a minute, maybe 10 seconds or so, and just like kind of nodded his head slightly. And it was weird because it never happened. Nothing like that's ever happened between us before. So I just grab my mail, say my goodbyes as I normally would, and I leave to go home. As I get home, I'm making my breakfast. I check my feed on my phone to see what's happening in the world as I normally do. And that's when I see the news, the headline that in a joint effort, the United States and Israel has attacked Iran. And suddenly, that awkward pause in the store made complete sense to me. So I'll forgive my appearance because I wasn't going to, record a video or anything today, but I did have to get this off my chest. It's not that the man in the store treated me any differently than he normally would, except for that slight little pause, which, like I said, was only a few seconds. But it felt different. I felt different. They obviously recognized that I was American. When I realized that this news broke about attacks involving the United States last night, something shifted in my gut. I realized that as soon as I walked out my front door today, I was in the Hickson Diaries. I wasn't just a neighbor or someone who lives in the local town on the street. To anyone who hears my accent today, I represent America. And right now, that's a very heavy thing to be. You all know I don't hold back on this channel. I can tell you my feelings. Um, and I'm not afraid to get political at times, but that's not what this video is about. I really wanted to talk about this concept of the unwilling ambassador that I seem to find myself playing a part of living here in the UK. It's a strange paradox when you're an expat or you're an immigrant. We leave our home countries for reasons. And for me, you guys know the story. I left because of the systems, the lack of support, the safety for my child. And I've, in many ways, sort of estranged myself from the American way of doing things, especially after being here a few years. But I still lived in America for 40 plus years, and geography doesn't erase identity. So, as much as I might feel a little more British sometimes and feel like this is still my home, I will ultimately always be American at my core. So, when big geopolitical events like this happen, when the US moves its military might on the world stage, it's almost as if I become that physical representation of the decisions that the US government has made to everyone that is in my daily life here in England. And I don't think they do it consciously. Like, it's not something nefarious. I don't think it's something that they even, realize or understand is happening. But I always feel this pressure like I have to have an answer or a defense, some or an explanation of some sort, for what my government is doing. And it happens all the time. It's not something that's exclusive to big events like what's happening now. It's a daily occurrence, but it's even more heavy. It weighs even more on you, and you're even more aware of it during these types of large events. It's almost like I'm expected to be the translator for a government that I physically left behind. I mean, I don't know if anyone else has ever, I know some of you have lived abroad, a lot of you have traveled around the world and lived in various places. So I don't know if that's ever like you've ever felt that way from your ethnicity or your background if you lived in a different country. If you've ever felt like a moment where you almost want to kind of lower your voice in public and not let people know you're from your native country because your accent will definitely give you away. It's not really shame, it's just more about exposure and the realization that you're like you're you're basically eternally tethered to a ship that you thought you'd already left way behind you. You disembarked and the port is way behind you, right? But you still have this like string attached forever. I mean, it just brings me to, I guess, the difference of how the news feels here in the UK versus how it feels in the States. If I were back in America right now, let's be honest, the air would be thick with opinions. Everyone would be at the top of their lungs, either defending it or shaming this decision. Um, they call them armchair generals where I'm from in New Jersey. Basically like Monday morning quarterbacks. I don't know if you've heard that. That's an American football term. Definitely showing my Americanness now. But basically the news pundits would all be screaming, right? And it's us versus them and pick a side and there's no nuance. That typical American high adrenaline, high fear presentation. UK, it's a lot quieter. It's a lot more pragmatic. It's a lot more straightforward. And it's not that like people aren't worried if it's going to affect the UK, if it's going to affect, our neighbors. It's just a different kind of worry. It's less about, okay, we're in this now, how do we win? And it's more about, okay, what does this mean for stability? And I guess some of that comes from the fact that the UK isn't directly involved, at least as of the recording of this video. But for me, that's where a lot of the friction comes. That's where a lot of the internal conflict comes. When my British friends ask me about like what's happening, as some people have reached out to me already today, what my take is and is everything okay kind of check-ins. Um they're looking for logic. And being an American, I don't know that I have that answer. They want to understand the strategy. They want to understand the motivation, the provocation. And I find myself in this like almost impossible position of having to explain American actions aren't typically driven by any kind of logic. Certainly not the kind of logic that makes sense to a lot of British people anyway. Most decisions by the United States government is driven by emotion, a reaction of some sort, or a need to project some kind of strength. And they use domestic politics as the catalyst to do that. It really comes down to explaining American exceptionalism over and over and over again to British people. And typically, I wouldn't mind, except in moments like this. And even though that exceptionalism is one of the very things that drove me away from living in the United States any longer, it's an exhausting thought process. It's almost like you have to do mental gymnastics because you have to be realistic and logical, but you also feel like you have to defend the why even when I don't agree with it. We talk on this channel a lot about like the high risk life in the United States versus the high floor life, right? The slower pace and the type of life where you might not have as many things, your quality of life perception between the two cultures. And usually we talk about it in things like healthcare because it's very blatant and it's very easy for a lot of people to see the contrasts. Something like the social programs, education. Um, but today I feel it in terms of global safety. Geographically, I'm closer to the conflict now more than I ever would have been in the United States, but psychologically, I do feel safer here in the UK. And I've kind of been trying to figure out that that conundrum, trying to figure out what that why is all morning. I think it's because the US, the US culture, I should say, is one of fear. And it's so part of the everyday life. It's becomes very internalized for American people. Whereas every global misstep or threat feels like a personal threat because that fear is always bubbling right under the surface. And then there's this sense of individualism on top of it where you have to prepare, you have to worry, and you're responsible for keeping yourself and your loved ones safe. Whereas here in the UK, there's this sense of like collective endurance. We will carry on, we will get through. And it tends to hold up even when the world shakes, at least if you're going on history. And there's a lot of history in the UK to go on. So I think that that's what it is that's making me feel calmer and safer here. But the irony is, maybe that is the irony, right? Is that even though I'm geographically closer, I feel safer because of that underlying calm. Even though I represent the country that's shaking the world right now. It's really dissonant, the feeling. It's really complicated. It's kind of like it kind of feels like being a guest in a house that my own family's throwing rocks at. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else, but that's kind of what it's feeling. And I'm like avoiding the window because that's what you need to do to stay safe. But at the same time, I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, why are you doing this? Is this the best situation? Anyway, I don't like I said, I don't have any kind of analysis or political commentary on this. It's still really new and fresh, and I haven't even processed a lot of the facts that I've learned, and I'm sure things are gonna change throughout the day. And I'm not, a newscaster or a war correspondent or anything like that. I'm just an average American that's living in England, trying to like drink my coffee and do my laundry and figure out what else I got to get done throughout the day, right? But also kind of in the back of my mind wondering how I look in my neighbor's eye today as well. I guess I guess my thought is this, really. If you're British and you have American friends and neighbors, be gentle. Be gentle with us today. We're often just as baffled and unsure and worried as you are when our government does things like this. We don't have a direct line to the White House. We're just trying to make a life just the same as you. And just like you're not responsible for your prime minister's decisions, we're not responsible for our president's. And no matter how you feel, no matter which side of the conflict you fall on, and I guess to my fellow Americans, whether you're here in the UK or in the US or anywhere else, first, if you're in a direct vicinity of the current conflict, please be safe. Any of the current conflicts, please be safe. But overall, if you are not directly involved, please just breathe, I guess. I guess that's what I have to remind myself to do as well. Remind yourself, like I am at the moment in real time, that we don't carry the weight of the whole country in our backpack. We're only one person, and it's okay to just be us today. And if we feel the need to kind of hide away a little bit to avoid the awkward conversation today, I think that that's valid. Um, we live in very strange times. I don't want to say unprecedented because I don't think it's unprecedented. I think these types of things come up regularly throughout history, and if we pay attention to them, then we could probably make much better, more logical decisions on a lot of them. But we do live in very tumultuous times. So everybody, I think we just need to remember we're all human beings, and conversation is okay and encouraged a lot on this channel, but also, I think that sometimes it's okay to just sit back and process and not engage in conversation sometimes, and just let people create, process things as they need to in their time. Let me know in the comments how this news feels to you. Wherever you are, is the atmosphere different? I mean, obviously be respectful and thoughtful, and let's see how things shake out and how the UK reacts. But everyone, please just overall, please just stay safe. Please just breathe before reacting. And I'll see you tomorrow.